There's a moment, and I think you know this moment, where everything just clicks. You're working on something and time disappears. You're not checking your phone. You're not wondering if this is worth it. You're not performing productivity. You're just in it, fully, completely. The thinking feels effortless. The words come right out. Your body isn't tense, and you're just moving through the work like water. That's flow state. And for most of my life, I thought that flow state had some magical quality that some people could tap into and others couldn't. You can call it luck, but I don't think it's quite that. I thought that some people just got to feel that way and some people didn't. I thought it was reserved for elite athletes and concert pianists, not for people building businesses from their living rooms while the baby monitor sits on the desk. Now, like I said, I've known flow my whole life. I never called it that when I first started. For me, I found it through dancing, and over the course of my life, I turned that into a career. And then in my very first online program, was able to dissect the art of flow. But again, I always thought of it in more of an artistic sense until recently, until the last couple years, working specifically in dealing with management. I know that sounds so boring and so lame, but there can be a beautiful rhythmic flow to your business, to the management and the operations of it. And what I most certainly know now is that it's definitely not luck. It's definitely not something that you're born with. It's all about designing the state that you're in, designing the environment you're in order to create flow. And anybody can do this, right? In your business, specifically the way you've built it or the way you could build it is one of the most powerful tools you have for creating a life that feels like it just flows more often. So that's what we're talking about today. Welcome to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and I'm so excited to dive in. Okay, before we go anywhere, I want to ground this conversation in what I actually mean when I say lifestyle richness, because lifestyle richness is not the Instagram version of entrepreneurship. It's not waking up at 5 a.m. to journal and manifest a 7-figure revenue while a linen shirt billows in the ocean breeze, right? Like, that's not what I mean. That's not what I've ever meant. Lifestyle richness, the way I define it, is having a life that feels full in the ways that matter to you specifically. It's presence. It's being available to the things that you actually care about. It's not being so depleted by your work that you have nothing left for your life. It's not building something so rigid that you can't move through it freely. It's waking up and recognizing your own life. My husband and I left traditional employment in late 2023, and one of the things that we said to each other out loud multiple times as a kind of promise was that we wanted to build something that felt good to be inside of. Not just something that produced results, but something that we could actually live in. We wanted to be present with our kids. We wanted to make enough money to not have to worry about how much money is in the account. If our kid wants to join a sport or play an instrument, we don't even have to think twice or check the account to see if it's something that we could do, right? We also wanted to be able to take a nap in the middle of the day on a Wednesday afternoon, or go out for pizza if we want. And again, not have to worry. This whole concept of lifestyle richness is going to look different for every single individual, but it has the same fundamental foundation of flow within management. So this is a completely different design goal than most business advice points you towards. Most business advice is optimized for scale, for acquisition, for unit economics and growth trajectories and exit multiples. And listen, none of that is wrong, right? But it's also not the whole conversation. It's especially not the whole conversation if what you're actually trying to build is a life, Okay. There are plenty of people that have successful businesses that say that you have to be a psycho, that you have to work so hard that you don't have the ability to be present with the life that you built it all for. And I just think that's garbage, right? So this is where the conversation about flow state comes in to the equation. Because what I've noticed for myself and in the conversations I have with people building businesses in this space is that when your business is well designed for you specifically, when the work you're doing aligns with how your brain actually functions, how your energy moves through the day, what you genuinely find meaningful, then you don't just perform better, but you feel better, right? You access that click-in moment more often. The ideas come faster, the decisions feel clearer, the hard days are still hard, but they don't hollow you out the same way. And that is not any sort of coincidence, but that is all done by design. So today I want to walk through what I think of as a holistic framework for understanding flow in the context of your business. So this is not a productivity hack, and this is not a time blocking system. This is so much deeper than that. And it's something about how you structure your entire relationship to the work that you do. Okay, so there's no such thing as a template that you can download and apply to your business for flow. These are the parameters that you need to figure out, that you need to set for yourself so that it works for you and your life and your goals and your business, which is a very unique equation that's never been solved before and can never be solved by anyone but you. Now, of course, I'm here to help, but let's dive in. So let's talk about what flow state is, because I think it gets used as a buzzword in a way that strips it of its real meaning. Now, there's a psychologist, and I can never say his name right. Mihaly, I can't even say it, y'all. His name will be in the description of this episode. But he made his whole life about studying flow, right? Like he spent decades studying what makes human beings feel most alive, most engaged, and most themselves. And what he found was that the conditions for that experience are remarkably consistent across people, across cultures, and across all kinds of work. Flow happens when the difficulty of what you're doing matches the level of your skill. When the challenge is high enough to require your full attention, but not so high that it tips into anxiety, you've hit flow, right? When you have clear goals, when you get immediate feedback, you know whether what you're doing is working. And when there are no distractions pulling you out of the present moment, that's it. That's the formula. So challenge meets skill, clear goals, immediate feedback, and no interruption. And side note, when I say feedback here, I'm not saying that there's someone grading your work. I'm saying feedback from the system that you're working in. Does it feel good? Does it look good? Is it effortlessly moving, right? Now here's where it gets interesting for entrepreneurs, and specifically for people building businesses that are meant to be sustainable, lifestyle flexible, and built around who they actually are. Most of us design our businesses in ways that make flow almost structurally impossible. We fill our calendars with meetings that don't require our specific genius. We say yes to work that's below our skill level because the money feels safe. We take on scope that's so far above our capacity then that we spend the whole project in like a low-grade panic. We build in so many communication obligations, the constant Slack pings, the inbox that never gets below 100, the clients who expect immediate responses, that we never have an uninterrupted block of time to actually be in the work. We've created conditions for chronic fragmentation instead of flow. And then we wonder why we feel disconnected from the business we supposedly love. We wonder why we're not generating our best ideas. We wonder why we feel productive but not alive. I want to be really honest about something here because I think it's so important. Flow is not a constant state. It's not something you access 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Research actually suggests that sustained deep flow in work lasts somewhere between 2 and 5 hours for most people on a good day. The rest of the time, you are in preparation or recovery, or you're doing the lighter work like admin stuff that fills in the gaps. So when I talk about designing your business for flow, I don't mean that every moment is transcendent. I mean, are you creating the conditions for flow to happen regularly? Are you protecting space for it? Are you doing work that's actually capable of producing it? That's a very different question than, am I being productive enough? Now, I've been dancing for almost 30 years. I trained professionally and worked professionally, right? And the thing about spending that much time in a discipline that requires your whole body and your whole mind is that you develop a very specific relationship to flow. You know what it feels like when it's there, and you know within seconds when it's gone. You can't fake it in a performance. You can't intellectualize your way into it. Either you're in the music fully, or you're executing steps. Those are completely different experiences, and everyone in the room can tell the difference, even if they don't quite know how to describe it. And by the way, this is not a metaphor. This is the most precise training I can imagine for understanding what flow actually is and what blocks it. The deeper question that this raises, and I've thought about this a lot, is, do I actually believe I deserve to feel that way in my work? Not just compensated, not just praised, but genuinely like in my body good. Because that belief, or the lack of it, shapes everything about how we build. I spent years, like genuinely years, treating discomfort as proof that I was working hard enough, treating friction as evidence of worthiness. If it was that easy, it wasn't serious, right? Like if it felt good, something must be wrong. So dumb. Such a block. Getting sober rearranged a lot of that for me. And when you remove the thing that you were using to manage difficulty, you have to actually look at whether you've created a life worth being present for. And one of the most honest things I had to face was that I had built some habits and structures and relationships, including work relationships, that were making it very hard to be in my own life. That was the beginning of redesigning everything. Okay, so now I want to give you a framework. And I want to say this before we dive in, like, this is not a book, right? Like, this is something I've worked out through my own experience and through watching people build businesses over the past few years. So take it, interrogate it, make it yours. I think that there are 3 dimensions to flow in a business context, and you need all 3 for it to work. You can't just optimize one and neglect the others and expect it to feel good. Like, that's why this is a holistic system, right? Like everything is connected. So the 3 dimensions are energetic alignment, structural permission, and meaning depth. So we're going to go through each one of those. So dimension 1 is energetic alignment. This is about understanding how your specific energy actually moves and building your business schedule and scope around that rather than fighting it. So everyone has different energy rhythms. Some people are sharp in the morning and foggy by 3. Some people do their best creative thinking at night. Some people have long, sustained attention spans. Some people, and I am in this camp, do their best work in shorter, intense bursts with real recovery in between. None of these patterns are wrong, they're just data. So the question is, does your business honor your actual energy pattern, or does it require you to be someone you're not? If you're a morning sharp person who has scheduled all your deep focus work in the afternoons because that's when your calendar was open, you're never going to hit flow. You're going to feel like there's sludge in your veins. If you're someone who needs quiet and singular focus to think clearly, but you've built a client communication style that requires you to be perpetually available, then you're not going to hit flow. You're just going to feel anxious all the time. Energetic alignment is about brutal honesty with yourself, about how you actually function. And then the willingness to structure accordingly, even when that means saying no to things or restructuring agreements that you've already made. For me, this showed up as understanding that I cannot produce my best creative work on days that are fragmented by calls. So I batch my calls. I have call days and I have deep work days, and they are completely separate. This is not always convenient, but it has made me significantly better at both. Now let's talk about dimension 2, which is structural permission. This one is subtler, and I think it's the one that trips up the most people who are smart and self-aware. Structural permission is about whether the actual architecture of your business, your offers, your pricing, your client relationships, your revenue model gives you permission to do the work that you do best. Here's what I mean by that. If your revenue requires you to be constantly selling in order to survive, if you don't close this week, you can't pay rent next week. You will never have the psychological safety to do deep creative work. Fear and flow are neurologically incompatible. You cannot be in a state of open, effortless engagement when your nervous system is running a low-grade emergency signal. If your offer requires you to do work that's below your skill level in order to fill your pipeline, basically if you're spending 60% of your time on tasks that don't need your specific brain, you won't hit flow because flow requires challenge that matches skill, not busy work. If your client relationships are structured in ways that require you to constantly justify your worth or over-deliver to compensate for your underpricing, if every client interaction basically costs you something emotionally, you are bleeding energy that should be going into the work. Structural permission means I have built this thing in a way that makes space for me to do what I actually do. Yeah, that might mean raising your prices. It might mean simplifying your offer suite. It might mean changing who you work with. It might mean building a passive or semi-passive revenue stream so that your best creative energy isn't held hostage in your pipeline. It might also mean you have to hire someone. Whatever it means for you specifically, the question is, does the structure of this business allow me to show up as my best self, or does it slowly sand me down? Let's talk about dimension 3, meaning depth. This is the one nobody talks about in business conversations enough. Flow requires meaning. You cannot be freely engaged in the work that you don't care about. You can be efficient, you can be competent, you can produce adequate results, but that click-in, time-dissolving, fully alive feeling that we're actually talking about requires the work to matter to you. And meaning is personal. Meaning doesn't come from the size of the revenue number. It doesn't come from the follower count or the press mention or the fact that someone told you your business was impressive. Meaning comes from an internal source, an internal sense that what you're doing is connected to something real, to your values, your story, your people, the change you actually want to make in the world. This is why I keep coming back to the bar industry as a through line in how I think about business. This world has taught me things about craft and hospitality and presence and community, and those things are genuinely alive in me. They're not a brand strategy. They're real. And when I'm working in a way that channels that, when the business is an expression of who I actually am rather than a performance of who I think I should be, the flow is there. But when I drift into work that's disconnected from meaning, work I took because it paid well or because I thought I was supposed to want it, the flow disappears, even if everything looks fine from the outside. Meaning depth is about constantly asking, why does this matter to me? And be willing to reorganize the business around that honest answer. So here's why all of this connects to lifestyle richness and not just business performance. When your business is designed for flow across all 3 of these dimensions, when your energy is aligned, your structure gives you permission, and the work carries meaning, something interesting happens to the rest of your life. You stop arriving home, metaphorically speaking, a lot of us work from home, I know, already spent. You stop bringing your depletion into your relationships. You stop resenting the business for taking so much. You stop feeling like your life is the thing happening around the edges of your work. The business stops being a drain and starts being a source. I've been thinking about this a lot since our baby arrived in February. There's something about having a newborn that strips away every piece of your life that isn't load-bearing. You don't have the bandwidth for anything that isn't necessary or deeply meaningful. And one of those things I've been so grateful for, so genuinely grateful, like in my bones grateful, is that we had built the business before he arrived in a way that could sustain itself without requiring us to run on empty. That did not happen by accident. That was a series of decisions made over a long time about what to say yes to and what to cut, about how to price, about how to structure, about what we actually wanted our days to look like. It was a design project, and flow was one of the design criteria. Now, I want to name something that can feel like a stumbling block when I talk about this stuff. It can sound like a luxury, like flow and meaning, depth, and energetic alignment are things that you get to think about once the business is stable, once the revenue is there, once the hard part is over. I want to push back on that gently but very directly, because the businesses in general that reach stability, and I've watched a lot of them, are almost always the ones whose founders built their business with this in mind from early on. Not the ones who ground themselves into dust building something misaligned and then tried to enjoy it later, because that later just never comes. The habits calcify, the structures solidify, the resentment accumulates. Designing for flow is not a luxury you earn. It's a choice you make, often before it feels safe to make it. And it will feel unsafe. Charging more before you feel ready feels unsafe. Saying no to misaligned clients feels unsafe. Protecting your deep work time feels unsafe when the inbox is full. Trusting that meaning-aligned work will generate enough money feels deeply unsafe in a culture that measures success in numbers. Doing it anyway is the work. Now, I just want to leave you with some questions. This isn't a checklist or homework assignment, but just things to think about. So pull these out on a walk, write about them, talk about them with someone you trust, let them be uncomfortable. The first question is about energy. When in your day do you feel most clear, most capable, and most yourself? And be honest, does your current schedule protect that time for your most important work, or have you given it all away? The second question is about structure. Does the current architecture of your business, your offers, your pricing, your client relationships, and the work you specifically do, give you permission to be your best? Or does it require you to be in survival mode more often than not? What would need to change for the structure to actually support you? The third question is about meaning. What's the work you do that makes you forget to check your phone? What's the work where you look up and 2 hours have passed and you're genuinely surprised? Are you doing enough of that? If not, what's in the way? And the fourth question is the hardest one. Is there something in your business, an offer, a client, a way of working, a belief about what you're allowed to have, that you already know is blocking your flow, and that you've maybe known about for a while? What would it cost for you to change that? And what is it currently costing you not to? And finally, what would your business look like if you designed it around feeling deeply alive in the work, rather than around what you thought you were supposed to want? You don't have to answer that question out loud, but I think it's worth sitting with, genuinely sitting with, and not rushing through. I think most people already know the answers. We just need permission to take it seriously. Now, none of these are trick questions, and they don't have right or wrong answers. They're just doorways. The insight is in what comes up when you actually ask yourself honestly. I can't talk about presence and being fully alive in your work without mentioning the thing that made presence possible for me, which is that I got sober. And I'm not about to turn this into a sobriety episode. That's not what today is about, but I want to name it because I think it is directly related. One of the things alcohol does, and that a lot of coping mechanisms do, is soften the edges of your life in a way that also blurs the feedback. You stop feeling the full texture of what's working and what isn't. You manage the discomfort instead of responding to it. And the signal that is your business, or your relationships, or your daily structure, is misaligned. That signal gets muffled. Sobriety cleared that static for me. Suddenly, I could feel very clearly when something was draining me and when something was filling me. When I was in flow and when I was grinding. When the work was meaningful and when I was just going through the motions. That clarity was not always comfortable, but it was information and I could actually use it. I think about this when I hear people say they're not sure why they feel so disconnected from their business. Sometimes the answer is structural. An offer that's wrong, a client relationship that's misaligned, a schedule that doesn't match their energies. Those things are fixable. But sometimes the answer is that something is numbing the signal. And the most important business strategy in the world can't help you if you can't feel what's true. Full presence is the prerequisite for everything else I've talked about today. Okay, I want to close today's big, heavy episode with this. I genuinely believe that the business is capable of giving us a rich life, not just a revenue number, but a life that feels good to live, are the ones that we build with some awareness of who we actually are, how we actually think, what actually matters to us, what conditions help us do our best work. This is not meant to be soft advice. This is meant to be the most practical thing that I know how to tell you. The flow state is not a productivity trick, but it is evidence that you are doing the right work in the right way, at the right time, for the right reasons. It's your nervous system telling you, this is it. This is what it's supposed to feel like. You deserve to feel that way in your business more than you probably do right now. So I'd love to know what came up for you in today's episode. If you listened to those questions and something cracked open, if you're sitting with something, if you're seeing your business differently, if you just want to think out loud with someone, I'm genuinely here for that conversation. Please send me an email, hello@marinamars.com. Tell me where you are. Tell me what you're building. Tell me what your flow looks like right now or what it's missing. I read everything. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for continuing to show up to this show and for the work that you're doing in your own life. Until next time, I'm Marina. This is Mocktails with Marina. And as always, if you need anything, just let me know.